I don't even need to hear anymore. I know Hasan's right. It's just that simple.
I gotta say, man, as somebody who believes in universal health care and knows the dangers posed to millions of Americans due to a lack of coverage, giving them brain cancer like this is completely unfair. Mike from PA decided to talk about Hasan Abi's recent back and forth with Ethan over a whole host of issues, over Tibet, over Taiwan, over Ukraine, and he wanted to add his 2 cents. Now, Hasan is a friend of Mike from PA, as far as I know, and if you go look at Mike from PA's stream, he'll often have the Hasan waiting room in his title in order to try to attract Hasan fans. He has a ton of Hasan fans in his community. A very large percentage of it is Hasan fans. And so he's very much in the Hasan orbit. And so I believe that Mike from PA will suck the hairs off of Hasan's dick anytime Hasan does anything. If Hasan kicked a baby in the face, he would do it. If Hasan decided that, you know what, we needed to invade Nepal, then we would see like Mike from PA talking about Nazis in Nepal. Like I believe that his job is to just suck the hairs off of his dick. And I didn't believe that wholeheartedly. I believed that like in my head, but I didn't say it before the segment. But after watching the segment, I'm pretty sure I can assert that on stream. Because he is commenting on Hasan's debate with Ethan over the issue of Taiwan and Taiwanese sovereignty, which is something that I believe that the Taiwanese deserve. I think they deserve to have freedom of expression. I believe they deserve to have a representative democracy. I believe that they deserve to have a civil society that allows them to advocate for women's rights, that allows them to advocate for LGBT rights, that allows them to advocate for workers outside of the direct control of the government. I believe those things are all very important. And so I believe that they have a right to sovereignty. And so I watched the debate that Hasan had. I disagreed with Hasan, whatever. He wants to comment on this, but he wants to comment on it without even doing the work to watch the debate. He says that right at the start of this, that he is saying that he agrees with Hasan without even watching the debate. This is simpage of a whole other level. Not only is this simpage of a whole other level, this is admitted to simpage of a whole other level. If I ever said on stream, I agree with Destiny, I didn't even watch the debate, but I agree with Destiny because, like, I mean, Destiny's like always right, or like Destiny's getting hunted by all these people. People would tear me apart, and they would tear me apart for good reason. If I said the same thing of Vosh, I should get torn apart for that. If you're just reflectively defending your friends' political positions on the internet because they're your friend or because you can get viewership from it, you know what that's called? It's called grifting. Anyway, let's watch.
Whenever I see someone going after Hasan the Hun on this website, without fail, it is something that is entirely bad faith. It's actually shocking how easily you can categorize someone as being dog shit the moment they go after him. Never fails. I haven't seen...
Like, anytime anyone criticizes Hasan, who, by the way, said during that, I think it was a GQ interview, I love critique. I love criticism. But then anybody criticizes Hasan, blocked, kicked out of the Discord, banned or kicked from the Reddit. Love critique, but if you critique him, you're a piece of shit. Fantastic.
Seeing the Ethan Klein, Hasan, Taiwan shit, but without even
listen to this. This is bizarre, man. I don't know how you could put a gun to my head. You could never get me to admit to this stuff, man. This would be unbelievably embarrassing. I'm just taking the side of this guy because he's my friend. I'm just taking the side of this guy just reflectively.
Fails. I haven't seen the Ethan Klein, Hasan, Taiwan shit, but without even looking into it, I 100% agree with what Hasan said. Why?
This is comical. If someone was to make a caricature of this guy, of Mike from PA, and they had him say this, I would say that's too on the nose, man. You got to make it funnier. It's too direct. You got to find another way to say something similar to this that's not as on the nose. But no, man, this is like a bad SNL sketch.
Because there's never been a liberal that has a good take on China. It's never happened.
No, none of the liberals who are like, hey, maybe, you shouldn't ban feminine men from television. Hey, maybe you shouldn't arrest LGBT activists. Hey, maybe, you shouldn't crack down on labor organizing outside of the direct control of the government. Hey, maybe, like, no liberal has ever said anything of value. Nobody's saying, like, hey, I think average people outside of the party should be able to vote. Nope. That's a bad critique because a liberal said it. Because they're liberals. This is just reactionary politics. Just, that's the enemy. I don't like liberals. That's what the liberals believe. Therefore, it's bad. This would be like if somebody asked me, what's your opinion on the Second Amendment? Now, I support the Second Amendment. But if I responded with that, like, Second Amendment's bad. Why? Well, those racist Republicans like it. That's the equivalent of what he's doing here.
So, yeah. I don't even need to hear anymore. I know Hasan's right. like, it's just that simple.
I gotta say, man, as somebody who believes in universal health care and knows the dangers posed to millions of Americans due to a lack of coverage, giving them brain cancer like this is completely unfair.
I think Hasan didn't go far enough. Taiwan basically was Nazi Germany for 40 years.
Dog, what? What? What does that even mean? What? Is that like the only other dictatorship he knows of? This is okay. Nazi Germany led an extermination campaign that killed upwards of around like 12 to 13 million people. And that's only if you're talking about like the Holocaust and the killing squads, and you're not talking about civilian bombing or, the actual combat casualties, German, Soviet, American, British, etc. They led one of the most complex and efficient genocide machines in the world. The Taiwanese government, and during the White Purges, killed upwards of 100,000 people. That's terrible. That's still not comparable to what the Nazis did on the grand scale of things. Like, if I was to say modern Russia is Nazi Germany, even though modern Russia has killed much more than 100,000 people in this war, I would say that is a historical, and that's still bad because you're still downplaying exactly what Nazi Germany was like. Now, if I wanted to say this aspect of Nazi Germany is similar to this, and this thing in Russia, like this, like one nation, one country, one Führer, is very similar to recent Russian propaganda narratives. Russian TV talking about the genetic impurity of Ukrainians is very similar to some of the race science that you would see from Nazi quote unquote scientists. I could go issue by issue and find comparisons, but you don't need to compare everything to the Nazis unless it's a good comparison, and there's not a good comparison here. What even is the comparison? Is it that they treated the natives poorly? Because this is going to be a shock, but the Japanese occupation also treated the natives poorly. The Qing dynasty that came before the nationalist Chinese also treated the natives of Taiwan poorly. They all tried to assimilate and colonize them. And I'm going to be blunt here, if Mao Zedong would have taken over Taiwan, he would have treated the natives poorly. Just like the Communist government of China treated the natives poorly in all these different regions of China. They're doing it today in Xinjiang with large-scale monitoring and putting them in camps. Now, they're not death camps, but they are re-education camps, and that's still a persecution of a religious minority. So what is this compare? Why does it have to just be like shock jock? Like, this is basically fighting the Nazis. Like, Chiang Kai-shek was a bastard. The White Purges were horrible, but it was democratic activists in Taiwan that brought an end to the Taiwanese dictatorship. and then brought a flourishing civil society and democracy to Taiwan. Once that system crumbled of the dictatorship that he's calling Nazi Germany to either be hyperbolic or whatever, even though, of course, they did horrible things, what he's calling that, it's already gone. It's already destroyed. And the system that was put into place by activists, by the people who wanted to transition to a democracy, is not the system that they have in mainland China. This issue was settled more than 30 years ago. They struggled for this democratic system because they didn't want what they saw in mainland China. They saw the suppression of free speech. They saw the suppression of people aren't going to like this, but working class people and independent unions, which they just called like foreign provocateurs. And they didn't want that for their country. And so they developed in a different way. And I think that's their right.
And it only exists because the United States basically prevented China from ending the war. Everybody knows that. That's why the U.S. has a one China policy, which
it's a little bit more complicated. I'm not going to give them too much crap over it, but like a naval landing in like 1950s China we do not know that it would have gone swimmingly for the communists. We don't know that. We do know that they've shelled. They were shelling like some of the bordering islands, but I will say that American aid to Taiwan now, for sure, is what is helping to guarantee their sovereignty. As the Chinese have built up a navy that is at least theoretically able to engage in an invasion. Whether that invasion would be successful or not is another story. But yes, we certainly did leverage our military power in order to keep Taiwan more sovereign.
We can cover that if you want. I think, honestly, I want to talk about it. So we probably will at some point.
Yeah, somebody just said it in chat. The PRC didn't have a navy in the early 50s for an invasion. Yeah, all they could do was bomb them. And that's what they did. They bombed them until America said, stop bombing them or we're going to bomb you. And then the Soviets turned to the Chinese and said, cut it out, cut it out, cut it out. I'm not looking for this right now. I'm not looking for this right now. And they backed off.
My ultimate take on Taiwan is part of China. And that is the opinion of the United States. Now, right now.
Can I also just say, why is it that all of a sudden, all of these socialists and communists, all out of nowhere are like, but isn't that the opinion of America? And so that's my opinion. And who cares? I thought America sucked. I thought America was bad, or at the very least, America got things wrong. I thought that was the idea. That our foreign policy was all around the world making mistakes and problems, and our unipolar power was irresponsibly used. But for this specific opinion, since it slightly aligns with their opinion, now it's the correct one? Why? Let's talk about the morality of the systems. Compare the systems. Compare the standard of living, which in Taiwan it is much higher. Ask the Taiwanese what they want to do with their younger generation identifying more and more and more as Taiwanese, and the vast majority of their people wanting to preserve the status quo, which we are helping them to do. Why is that bad?
Now, there is an independent government from the Chinese Communist Party. It has but this is a rebellious province that is maintained by the United States.
Dude, this is just fucking Bing Shaling, man. This is a rebellious province. All hail Mao, man. The revolution shall come to Taipei. We shall bathe in the blood of the rebellious. What is this nonsense? The rebellious province. Yeah, America was a rebellious province once. I don't know, man. Does he drink tea? Does he eat crumpets? Last time I checked, he was American.
For the purposes of undermining and hopefully supplanting the current Chinese government.
That's why the French supported us. Didn't make our struggle any less worthwhile.
But the United States of America also maintains independent relations with Communist China, where we have given them a lot of concessions in order to have access to their labor market to make money. The reality is that the United States of America does not support Taiwan as a political entity. It supports Taiwan because it represents a threat to China.
We do support Taiwan as a political entity. There's a lot of lobbyists that work on this issue specifically. We've seen American support, as in American public support for Taiwan, skyrocket in recent years, going to its highest levels, in large part because of the democratization. But with the Cold War ending, there was not really much of a reason for America to be as supportive of Taiwan as they were before. I mean, even after the Sino-Soviet split, like erupted, and we took advantage of it under the Nixon administration, the reasons for supporting Taiwan became more and more up in the air. Like, there were multiple presidencies, like the Jimmy Carter administration, the Nixon administration, multiple administrations that kind of floated the idea of basically leaving the Taiwanese, you know, upstream, kind of almost abandoning them. And it was Congress who got in the way every time and stopped that. That's why we have the Taiwan's Relations Act, which was passed in tandem with our normalization of relations with the Chinese, which is usually not talked about. Our defense of Taiwan has been the norm for over or around 50 years now with the Taiwan's Relations Act. And the Chinese know it. We are not like challenging the status quo or like disrupting the status quo to continue supporting them in that way. It's been the law of the land for over 50 years, passed by Congress, not the president. And I like it when Congress puts their hands on foreign policy. They should check the presidency more. They should make sure that the presidency has a foreign policy agenda that is within the values and within line with not only like American national security interests, which is somewhat a buzzword, but we should, of course, uphold our own national security, but also is with what American people want. And as their society democratized, support for Taiwan went up, because Americans feel more comfortable supporting democracies than countries like Saudi Arabia. I'm much more comfortable with us selling weapons to Taiwan to defend their own cities than us selling weapons to the Saudis so they can bomb other people's cities. Stoic Squirrel, thank you so much for the tier 1 and being sub for 31 months.
And a thorn in China's side. It's a real strategic weakness of China because Taiwan is very close to the physical shores of mainland China. And so it represents a real credible military threat to much of southern China.
What does that mean, really? It represents a real credible military threat. What's a physical shore? Is there a translucent shore? Is there a metaphysical shore of China? What's the metaphysical shore of China? But putting that aside, when we say a credible threat, are the Taiwanese going to invade China? They can't invade China. Nobody's under the illusion that the Taiwanese are going to invade China. Nobody is. So when we say it's a real threat, it's a real threat the same way the Cubans are a real threat to us if the Chinese put a base there. The Chinese are not going to invade, and they're talking about it, by the way. That's a real thing that's being discussed between the Cubans and the Chinese. That wouldn't happen. If the Chinese put a base there, it would cause some rumblings in the United States, but it would not cause us to think that an invasion of Florida was imminent or that we were at risk of a land invasion. And that's putting aside the fact that we don't even have military bases in Taiwan.
Okay.
I think he just means it's close to Taiwan. I mean, it's close to China, and therefore it's close to China. Therefore, it's a threat to China because an operation could be launched from there, like a bombing run or something. I guess that's the idea. Is that it makes it harder for them to dominate the South China Sea? I guess that's definitely a part of China's national security policy, that they want to dominate the South China Sea, which includes territorial claims on Japan, Brunei, Malaysia, Vietnam, Taiwan, the Philippines, like for example, the Scarborough Shoal, where a lot of Filipino farmers have been harassed by Chinese vessels. And all these countries seem to agree that China needs to back the fuck off. It's only China that believes that they shouldn't back the fuck off, and they have claims to all of that.
Okay, that's why we maintain it. It is a strategic advantage.
It is also true that a big reason why we support Taiwan is we do see them as a counterbalance to China. That is true. It's one of many reasons. I think people like to simplify things. It's the same reason why I kind of like I enjoy Peter Zeihan videos every once in a while, but sometimes I feel like he simplifies things way too much. And it's kind of, I'm getting this not the same vibe because Peter Zeihan puts it a lot more eloquently, and I think, you know, does more research. But I'm getting the same vibe here, just very kind of like a simplistic packaged narrative for his audience. And you can see people in chat. See that guy right there? Eddie D. Newgate. Ah, I see. These are people learning about Taiwan for the first time, and they're being told, so Taiwan was Nazi Germany for a bit, and now like we support them because, you know, they pose like a threat to the what was it? What did he call it? The transcendental shores of whatever, the shores of southern China. And that's it. There's no perspective of Taiwanese people. There's no discussion with the people who live on the island and what they want. It's just, well, China feels a little uncomfy with Taiwan, so I think they should have it.
It's an unsafe.
And this is a problem I've noticed with a lot of Twitch political commentary. Not a lot of platforming of the people who are affected by the issues they're discussing overseas. Does Mike from PA even know anybody from Taiwan? Has he ever spoken to a Taiwanese person? Like Hasan, like I see a lot of discussion on the Ethan Hasan podcast about Taiwan, about Tibet, about Ukraine. And are there any Ukrainians on? No. Are there any people from Tibet on, or people displaced in the diaspora? No. Are there any people from Taiwan on? No. And I understand it's your podcast. People come on to want to listen to you. But I do wish that there was more platforming of these perspectives. Or if you're not platforming these perspectives, you at least voice their perspective.
Sinkable aircraft carrier for the United States. We can threaten and menace China from Taiwan.
I like that Taiwan is just a device to be used to threaten China, but China constantly saying we will invade and conquer Taiwan, violating their airspace, driving their ships clearly within the territorial waters. And this is not just with them, but with other countries in the region as well. That's nothing. That's whatever. That's not America, so that's fine.
And we could use it as a launching ground for aggression against China. That's why we support Taiwan. And Taiwan only existed because we stopped China from, you know, ending the war by invading Taiwan.
I want to hear General Dinkleberry here explain how they're gonna how China would have invaded Taiwan in 1950. I just want to hear the invasion plan. Okay, maybe 1980, 1990, right? Maybe it would have been more viable, but I just want to hear the invasion plan.
We interfered in a war that we had no business interfering in. Now, I am, you know, the only reason we're even talking about Taiwan is because the United States State Department is doing aggression against China.
China's constantly saying they're going to invade Taiwan, not aggression. America saying they want to sell weapons to Taiwan in case China invades them, aggression. Okay? That fantastic. Great analysis.
And so they're distracting you by bringing up shit that hasn't even... Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed about China's policy towards Taiwan whatsoever. Nothing's changed as far as China's relations with Taiwan.
There's been a massive increase in violations of Taiwanese airspace, a massive increase of cyber attacks, a massive increase in them violating the territorial waters. The rhetoric from the government is that they're stating the year that they're going to invade Taiwan. Did you guys know that? They're saying that they're going to invade Taiwan by 2027. Now, that's probably not true. It's probably just a lot of chest pounding. But that type of rhetoric, combined with an escalation in probing their defenses, is a change. They've also vastly increased the size of their Navy, vastly increased how much money they're spending on the armed forces. And $1 in the Chinese defense industry goes a lot further than $1 in the American defense industry too. So no, the situation is changing. The situation will continue to change. Iris385, thank you for the tier 1 beats up for 3 months.
Nothing's changed as far as our official position towards Taiwan. But the United States is building up weapons and our allies closer and closer to China. We're building up.
What does that even, what do you mean closer and closer to China? What does that mean? Taiwan didn't move any closer to China. We've been sending Taiwan weapons since before 1979, but we've had that as congressionally mandated weapon shipments, meaning it was voted on by America's democratically elected representatives to send weapons to Taiwan and sell them the weapons necessary to defend their island. What do you mean we're getting it closer? Like, the island hasn't moved. We're not the ones building artificial islands. I think maybe he means the troop buildups on the islands and bases we already have. I think there's like one or two. I think like there's possibly a base in like Japan we're talking about building. I would like to hear what he's specifically referencing here in reference to Taiwan. Maybe there's another country that he's talking about here, but I'd like to hear it. What's the population of Taiwan? About 25 million people. It's actually one of the most urbanly, this is not super well known, is one of the most urbanly dense countries in the world if you exclude its mountainous regions. Meaning that a Chinese bombing campaign could be particularly disastrous. Also, if there was an invasion of Taiwan, or the ships started to come up, there's a decent chance that a lot of those Taiwanese people would end up being refugees, not only going to places like Japan and the Philippines, but also likely the United States, since we have quite a large Taiwanese community in California, and many of those displaced refugees would probably come to California to rest with their family. Yaroslav Hunka said, "Thank you for your work. You're my hero." Thank you, 89-year-old, or no, I think it's 98-year-old Waffen SS Canadian soldier, Ukrainian Canadian soldier. I didn't know you watched Twitch and are in my chat. That's very, that's crazy. I don't like you very much. I'm just gonna be blunt with you. I don't like the SS, but yeah, I guess you're with the youth, huh? Those countries want those bases, also territory bases, and around. I don't really know which. The second part of that is kind of hard for me to read. But the first part, think of it 100 bits. It depends on the country and it depends on the region. For example, the country of Japan is overall supportive of America, like having an alliance with them and having troops on the island. But on the specific islands where we have bases, relationships with the locals are a lot more shaky. This is due to instances of sexual assault between American soldiers and locals on places like Iwo Jima, and just like different instances where American soldiers have, at the very least, if I'm putting it lightly, have not been considerate of the locals. And the American government has tried to reel that in and deal with it, but that the damage it has dealt to the relationship with the locals on those islands, not great, not fantastic. So it depends when you say like the locals support it. The total of the country of Japan, they support it. Same thing in South Korea, for example. But the areas that are around these bases specifically, you're going to see a difference in the amount of support. That doesn't mean that it still isn't the majority, but there's still going to be like differences in the percentage of support. What about the Philippines? The Philippines, I think, does support a relationship with the United States more, or alliance or military partnership with the United States more than it does with China, from the last polling data I saw. But I don't know the specifics about military bases in the Philippines. I'd have to look that up. I don't want to say something that I don't know for sure.
We are increasing the deployment of our forces there. What would you do if a strategic rival was building up military forces near your border? If you were sane...
Wait, sorry. The irony is just hit me like a bag of bricks. I'm just going to let him say that again.
The United States is building up weapons and our allies closer and closer to China. We're building up. We are increasing the deployment of our forces there. What would you do if a strategic rival was building up military forces near your border? If you were sane, you would defend yourself. And you...
Wow. Huh. But that applies to China, but it doesn't apply to Taiwan. Isn't that interesting? That applies to China, that doesn't apply to Taiwan. I just thought that was interesting. If you're sane, you get weapons to defend yourself. Unless you're Taiwan, then obviously you just roll over and die.
You would prepare, defend yourself. That's exactly what's happening.
Let's look at the military budget increases between Taiwan and China. Taiwan has ended its conscription services. It no longer does that. It no longer forcefully drafts people. China is massively increasing the amount of funding they've put into their navy. The Taiwanese just cannot match the Chinese dollar for dollar. They just don't have the funds at their disposal. Even if per capita they have a higher standard of living, China's just a much larger country, much more resource rich, and more countries, and has deeper ties with more countries in the world than Taiwan does. And China has worked hard to try to isolate Taiwan diplomatically in the world. Why does this only go one way?
That's why we, those of us on the left who shouldn't be abdicating for brinksmanship with China.
Look, the solution, right? If we want a good solution that avoids brinksmanship, it is something that maintains Taiwanese sovereignty, at least keeps the status quo, which is avoided a large-scale war over the Taiwanese peninsula for about 80 years, which I do think is a success to some extent, at least a success of stopping a war. We should try to avoid that by, okay, China, you destroy these artificial islands that you're building up stuff on, and we'll decrease our military deployments on these bases. You stop violating Taiwanese airspace, and maybe we will decrease the amount of planes we have in these bases, right? This is how you would negotiate a de-escalation that avoids war and allows us to have a more productive relationship. That's something I would want proposed by the American government. That's obviously I'm not going to get to all the details right now, but that's a vague proposal I could get behind. But the proposal I see from MikeFromPA, the proposal I see from Hasan is, fuck the Taiwanese. Who, whatever, 25 million who's? A bunch of foreigners to me.
Stupid. We don't have a strategic interest. Anytime you're talking about the United States and China...
Dude, we don't have a strategic interest in Taiwan. They produce 50% of the world's microchips, including 90% of the world's most complex microchips. The reason why the United States is right now investing in domestic microchip manufacturing in such a large scale with the CHIP Act is because we recognize that microchips are a national security interest, which it is. National security is often used as a buzzword, but in this case, it absolutely is. So much of our economy, so much of our daily lives, so much of our military production, of everything is reliant on microchips.
China, you should ask yourself, is it worth dying over this? And not for somebody else, for yourself.
I mean, for me, absolutely. I don't know if that's true for everybody else. I feel like, I don't want to talk out of my ass here, but I feel like compared to other streamers, I have a tiny bit more wiggle room to say that I'm willing to put my life on the line for either the cause of democracy or the cause of self-government and sovereignty for people who want to rule themselves. I feel like, personally, that's my view. Now, other people can have different views. Obviously, people don't need to care about those things as much as I do. But I'm willing to, I'm willing to face artillery. I'm willing to face missiles for this thing. I probably would be willing to do it in Taiwan as well. It would depend on the specifics of the war. Like if Taiwan actually launched some reconquest of China and then got conquered, I'd probably not risk it because it'd be their own fault. But that's not going to happen. So in the case where we're talking about China invading Taiwan in order to reconquer it, yeah, I think I would be willing to. I don't know if that's something silly that someone would laugh at, but I don't think that, being willing to put your life on the line for something that you believe in is something to laugh at. I note that MikeFromPA might think that's silly because he would never put his life on the line for anything he believes in. He's just going to sit in his room and stream and talk about things he doesn't understand, just like he did with Afghanistan, just like he did with Ukraine, and just like he did with Taiwan, because that's his prerogative. That's not my prerogative.
You should ask yourself this. Whenever you're talking about geopolitics, you should step back and ask, is it worth dying for this?
Is it worth dying for democracy? As an American, yeah, I believe that.
Would I die over this? And if the answer is no, then you should oppose the United States being involved militarily. I love how every 2 hours.
Also, by the way, this is a stupid standard. Somebody could acknowledge that another people's struggle is valid and we should support it, while also acknowledging that they personally don't have enough invested for them themselves to go over there and fight. You can acknowledge that. For example, let's say somebody didn't want to go fight in World War II. They didn't want to for any number of reasons. They had to take care of the farm. They had to do this, had to do that. They could still believe that it was worthwhile for us to send weapons to the British to fight against the Nazis.
There's some new Twitter post saying China's ramping up arms against Taiwan. What they really mean is China is increasing their own capability to defend themselves from the United States.
Oh my God, that framing. When we're sending weapons to Taiwan, this is aggression on the translucent, multi-dimensional shores of southern China, of the American horrific aggression. China builds up weapons to invade Taiwan while stating they will. Nah, that's different. That's like, nah, man, like that's actually, in preparation for the dumb Americans and what they're doing. Come on, get out of here. Come on. I don't even think he believes that. I don't even think he believes that. Where's the CCP handler? Are they off screen? Are they off screen? Can we just drag? One second. If I drag them over, it doesn't work. I can't see. Come on. What a ridiculous. Can we hear that again? Can we hear that line again?
Would I die over this? And if the answer is no, then you should oppose the United States being involved militarily. I love how every 2 hours there's some new Twitter post saying China's ramping up arms against Taiwan. What they really mean is China is increasing their own capability to defend themselves from the United States.
So when we send weapons and China and Taiwan buys weapons, that's to attack and conquer and be evil towards China. When China does it, it's only to defend themselves from the mythical Taiwanese invasion that will never come. Get out of here.